Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Whiny Tech Guy. It is March 7th, 2012, and this week's episode, I just said episode number 2, there's not a whole lot going on, and I think it's because of today's big event, and that's the new iPad. Everybody was calling it the iPad 3 until a couple days ago, and then people started trying to call it the iPad HD, and the event was this morning, and it turns out they didn't call it the iPad 3 or the iPad HD, but it's a new iPad, and it seems like it's a pretty good upgrade. The new Retina screen, I can't wait to see that. Anyway, that's nothing to whine about, so that's pretty cool. But like I said, it's pretty sparse this week, so I do have a few things I want to whine about. One of the things about the iPad is the competition that just hasn't materialized yet, and I know that the Android guys out there would disagree. They say that there's some good ones out there. There might be some good tablets out there to play around with if you're into Android, but for the consumer, for the millions and millions of people that are like the people that have bought the iPad, there just isn't a good alternative right now. The closest that I think that has come is the Samsung, the Galaxy Tab. They've had a couple of revisions of that, I think, and maybe they're getting closer, but they still don't quite have it right, and I don't think that Android is quite there yet for the tablets. It feels shaky, just like some of the Android versions for the phones that are out there. It's getting better, but like the problems they're having on the phones is upgrading to the new versions of Android, and you could have a phone that's 2 years old and be on an old version because they're just not updating. The carriers and the makers, Motorola, Samsung, HTC, just aren't concerned about upgrading these phones over and over like Apple has been doing mostly with the iPhone. They just want to sell new phones, so it's really kind of a catch-22 for them. It's unfortunate for the Android people, but anyway, the tablet competition is what I was whining about, and actually it's not really much of a whine because I prefer the iPad, but it's just crazy to me that 2 years in and third version now, going on 3 years, there's still not a good competitor. Some people would say Kindle Fire is a competitor. It's really not an iPad competitor. I think it's probably a good device for what it is for Amazon. A lot of people are buying it, and that's great, but it's not going to replace the iPad, and that's pretty much proven itself out in the last several months, I think. Time will tell. Maybe it is. Amazon doesn't like to put out their numbers, which is odd because Apple does. They put out the numbers of things they sell most of the time, not all the time. Anyway, I'm still waiting for a good competitor to maybe push Apple a little bit, although they do seem to be pushing themselves in making better revisions every year. Can't really complain much about what's out for the iPad. It's a good little machine. So that was the first thing. The other thing I wanted to whine a little bit about is the broadband throttling or the broadband issues on like the mobile phones, and I guess it applies to tablets as well. But I think you know what I'm talking about. AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, these guys that have the data plans, and just like their talk plans, their data plans just don't make any sense. A lot of them. I don't understand what these guys are thinking. They must sit in a room and try and figure out how to confuse people, and they can make more money off them. That's the only conclusion I can come up with because it's just goofy. If you have a pretty low limit like I do and you go over on some of these plans, you can really screw yourself over going over in 1 month. So you do what I do, and when I get a message that says, hey, you're getting close to going over and there's 2 or 3 or more days left in the month in your billing cycle, I turn data off just so I won't go over. I don't want to pay the extra money. I don't have it, and I don't like that just for the few users that are out there that they're throttling them. I think that people should pay for what they use, and if you're a high bandwidth user and you're going above 3 gigs, whatever a month, whatever you're doing with your phone and your tablet that does that, I don't know, I'd like to understand that better, but you should pay for it. You should pay more for it than I'm paying for 200 megabytes or 300 or 400 or whatever it is that I use. I wish that it was a little bit simpler, and I wish that if I went a little bit over, it wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg to go over, so that I wouldn't feel like I have to turn off my functionality, because then my experience goes to hell. And I'm all about the experience. I don't want to have to deal with it. And so that makes me mad. Sure, a warning telling me that I've crossed some threshold would be great, so that I know I'm going to spend a little more money. That would be great, but then I have the choice to say, well, it's going to cost me a little more money or not. Anyway, kind of want to complain about that a little bit. I wish these guys would get their crap together and make people happy so that you would want to use their service. It's like it's painful to own a cell phone and deal with these stupid carrier companies, all of them, every single one of them. The last thing I want to talk about is something I read the other day that had to do with Google and Motorola. If you don't know, Google bought Motorola. I think that the deal's done. I think it's gone through. So now Google's in the same kind of situation that Apple is, where they're making their own hardware for phones, for Android phones. And one of the things I read was these yahoos at Google. That's kind of silly to say that, isn't it? These goofballs at Google that are saying that they're building a wall between Motorola and Google, and that Motorola will be on its own to build these phones, and that there's not going to be any close cooperation or whatever between the Android team and the Motorola team, the hardware. And first of all, I don't believe that, so they're lying. They're out and out lying. Why not just tell the truth and own up to it? They're worried that it's going to piss off the other carriers and hardware makers. So what? You bought Motorola. Deal with it. Make some dang good hardware. Let's, give Apple some competition. Let's do it right. Make some phones that you can upgrade your Android versions quickly and easily, and put out a good experience for your users. Let's have that out there. Right now, it's kind of to me, it's a one-man race. If you want a really good, nice, polished experience, you buy an iPhone. End of story. Yeah, there's been a lot more Android phones sold, but guess what? These aren't people that necessarily want smartphones. They're going down to the at&t store, and some 18-year-old salesman who's working on commission is saying, hey, come over here and look at this phone that's going to cost you $100 or $200, and buy this phone. Look, it's a smartphone. Ooh, it's got icons on it, and it's great, and it's just like the iPhone. Then you don't have to pay like $300 for it. You can just pay $50 or $100 and you get this thing. And people are like, oh, I was just going to get a simple cell phone, but okay, I'll try it. I can get my email and I can do the Google on it. And so they buy it, and then they don't use the crap. They use it as a phone. And the data analysis shows that. It proves it. When you look at the web usage of these mobile devices, the iPhone is way above what it should be per unit compared to how many Android phones that are out there. So that means that most of the Android users out there aren't using their phones for what a smartphone was made for. They're not using the data. But these phone makers and carriers are making bank off of these data plans they're selling these poor idiots. So that kind of makes me mad too. So I wish Google would just own up to what they're doing and just be transparent, open out about it. And if HTC and Samsung jump over to the Windows Phone stuff or do their own OS or whatever, fine. Google has their own maker now. They can own Android if they wanted to. Nobody else would build on it if they start making better devices than the others are. And maybe that's what they'll do. Maybe they'll ease into it, and over time they'll switch to that. Maybe that's their plan. I don't know. So in that case, I guess I could be off. Fine, whatever. I could be wrong. I'll admit it. Anyway, those are my whines for this week. This is episode 2 of the Whiny Tech Guy, March 7th, 2012. Goodbye. See you next week.